Okay, thank you very much for attending to my session. Short introduction of me. I'm Michel Schildmeijer. I'm from Amsterdam, from the Netherlands. It's the country in between Germany and the UK. It's a small country, and I do a lot of stuff, also Oracle, but also a lot of open source. And if you look at the years, Oracle is contributing to open source a lot. So that's why I got an opening in this CD Summit. But my traditional corner is Unix and later on middleware. So I'm from a bit of a different angle maybe. Right, there are some DevOps challenges these days. Every DevOps team has. It's about culture, but it's also about getting continuous and getting automated. That's really a struggle for many teams. So if you look at build, if you look at test, if you look at deploy, and also if you look at monitor, then the keyword in this is all automation. But how do you get automated? That's really the struggle many teams have. And also Oracle, but also other vendors work on it. And I give you a view about how Oracle looks at it in an open source perspective. I'm not a sales rep from Oracle. I also can criticize them because I'm an Oracle ace. So I know the good and the bad things about what they are doing. So if you look at a cloud native container pipeline based on what Oracle thinks, you have a versioning and container registry, a container engine, a provisioning part, you have container pipelines and packaging and deployments. First of all, the versioning and container registry. Of course, the de facto standard nowadays is Git. You also have Subversion and some other ones. Subversion, well, there is some initiative from the cloud, but I haven't seen that much, and Git is used amongst the entire open source community. And Bitbucket also, but Git is the most accepted one. If you look at container registries, you also, of course, you have the Docker Hub, but you also have the vendor registries. There are many. And if you look at the registry I used the Oracle Container Registry, which you can import into your cloud environment and have a local registry of your images. So to streamline your container pipeline, you have to think of some things like the DevSecOps themes, like security with your DevOps teams. So, but also shareable access, and this is one of the things to get shareable access for all your developers or all your team members to build and test their code from GitHub. So use the GitHub authentication module for Kubernetes. For this you have to enable the webhook module within Kubernetes itself, and then you have to create a token authenticator for the shareable access and instruct your Kubernetes API server to have this config file and also the time to live for the authentication mechanism, which is default 2 minutes, but you can increase or decrease it to your needs. Okay, this, and also deploy keys within GitHub are very useful for your developers to deploy with the SSH access to any resource you would like. So you also have to create a registry, secret, for your Docker registry within Kubernetes to have a wide access to your container registry. The second, container orchestrations. Well, there are many engines provided by many vendors. Everyone knows we're at KubeCon what Kubernetes is and what it does. It's a distributed platform for a framework for distributed platforms, and also it manages and orchestrates containers, usually Docker-style containers. So if you have storage, compute, network, it all has to be managed, and Kubernetes is the de facto standard to do that. If you look at the diverse vendors which are providing an engine sorts, that you have Microsoft, Google, IBM / Red Hat now, DigitalOcean, but many more, and also of course Oracle has a engine which is pretty much similar to every other Kubernetes engine which is available in the cloud. So if you look at the way Oracle provides it, you have the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which is the second generation infrastructure Oracle provides. You have the registry, which you can attach to your container registry. You have the Kubernetes engine, which you can set up by doing it from a console or doing it automated, which I will come to that later. And you can do your own management, do your VMs on this cloud infrastructure. So provisioning Kubernetes can be done in several ways. One of these ways is using Terraform. It's a scripted setup for your Kubernetes engine, and if you look at it at the right side, you have your client, and you generate your private and public keys. Then you have to set up an API key in your cloud at your cloud provider, and then you have to download your provider for your specific cloud environment from Terraform, and set up the environment variables, compute, storage, network, everything you need for your cloud infrastructure for Kubernetes. Then you do an initialization, and you do a plan to see if everything you've done is okay, to check, and then you can apply it, and then it will provisioned as a Kubernetes infrastructure to your cloud using a cluster spread over multiple availability domains in your cloud infrastructure. So this is an extract from such a Terraform process. So your container pipeline, Oracle acquired a few years ago Wercker. Wercker was a Dutch company, and Wercker was an open source initiative to set up a container pipeline with a web interface in front of it. You also have some REST interfaces for that. Anyhow, it's a Docker native CI/CD automated pipeline, and you can use it for Kubernetes in microservices deployment. It's still open source, but Oracle charges you, of course, for using it in their cloud. So any artifact will be packaged as a Docker container. If you look at the setup, the schema, the architecture, then you, at the left side, for you, the right side, I think, you have your GitHub, and you have your wercker API, which can be a web client or an API based on JSON REST interfaces. In your pipeline, you can include your build, your test, and your pushing to your container registry. And after that, it will be provisioned to your Kubernetes orchestration engine across your entire or maybe subset of your availability domains to have your Kubernetes cluster ready. And depending on the type of applications you have, you can expose it to the outside world. So if you look at any deeper into Wercker, you have some types in that, types of configurations. A working group, that's similar to a GitHub account. And in this working group, you can have many applications, and users can have many organizations to work with. It depends on how you set up this in your wercker account, in your wercker repository. So if you will look at this wercker organization, it has a link to any project in GitHub you can define, or Bitbucket or whatever. And it contains the build workflows, and it has dependencies, environment, and permissions. So it sets security for you as well. So if you look at the concept of building pipelines with Wercker, then you have steps, pipelines, and workflows. Steps are isolated steps for getting your scripts in. It can also be a binary or a tool, a Maven or any other tool, Gradle, to include it into your build. So, and then you have your pipeline, and the pipeline is a series of steps which are triggered by maybe another pipeline or a Git push or whatever. And then you have your workflow, and then the workflow is a set of pipelines together, and you can branch them if you like. You can split them up in several deployments, like your blue-green deployments. You can easily split them up. So here you have an example of your container pipeline. If you set up a new application, you can spin up a wercker YAML, which you can use for your Kubernetes deployment. But you can also use your own wercker YAML or your own YAML file to specify. But if you don't do that, then automatically some will provision for you. And you can add your Kubernetes specifics to it. So here's an example of this pipeline: a push release and a deploy to your Kubernetes cluster. And if you look at the bottom, you can see your Kubernetes token, and your master is specified within wercker. And this is how a YAML file looks like. It's very simple. Well, I spoke about Terraform. You can also include Terraform into your CI/CD pipeline within wercker. So that's very easy. In this case, you can see the steps which are to be taken and which actions the steps contains, like the plan. I already mentioned the initiation of your Terraform, and in the end, of course, the apply to your Kubernetes engine. So your pipelines, already said, it's to install your packages to run tests. You can run every test you like with Python scripts or Bash scripts or whatever. Okay. Okay. Last, I want to mention, it's a bit of an other topic, it seems, but it can also be integrated within wercker. Helm. As you might know what Helm is, but I still want to elaborate it. It's a release and package manager for Kubernetes. Now, Kubernetes, from its origin, isn't that good in versioning, so Helm is a bit better in that, using manifest files and all kinds. So Helm is being used more and more for doing deployments and doing release management in Kubernetes. So when you look at Helm, you have two components: the client side and the version side, which is Tiller, which you don't see anymore when you install Helm. And you can integrate, as I already said, Helm into your container pipeline. So it's very easy to get Helm. Just get the script and initialize it. And then you're almost ready. You have to do your role-based authentication stuff, of course, because otherwise it won't work as you would expect it. And then if you look at Helm, you have several components. Of course, the root, and the root is divided into charts and values and templates. So if you look at the specific parts of Helm, your chart is for your name of your application, your versioning, description, everything, and your values are used by Tiller to parse them to Kubernetes in the end. So it's a simple setup of how a workflow of Helm is working. If you look at the left side, sorry, you have your Helm chart, which is picked up by the Helm client. It pushes it to Tiller, and according to the values you parsing to your Kubernetes API server, it will be deployed with maybe a ingress rule or whatever other component you will require for that. And you have your running application. So to include Helm into your wercker pipeline, you have to set up your Git repository as your application and specify a pipeline, in which I called Helm chart generate. You don't have to generate your wercker, your YAML if you already have one already set. I had already one, so I could also customize it for my cloud infrastructure to set up Kubernetes access and cloud infrastructure access and all those. So this is a example of this YAML file which is being used to initiate Helm and deploy from your container pipeline. So this is the build which was running. It took a while. I don't know why. Maybe because I did it yesterday. Maybe because my internet was a bit slow. I don't know. But anyhow, it worked. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.